Hey guys, JKMan99 here, and welcome to my Lost videos. Alright, so this is part 2 in the Lost What If series, where we basically take the entire season 2 and I do one major what if question and apply it to the entire season and see how it affects the show overall. So before we get into that, I just want to quickly say, these videos are great for me, they're hopefully great for you, but I am struggling to come up with a proper title for them because I want you guys to know what you're actually getting into. So essentially, I'm not sure what the title of this video is going to be, but essentially what this is my alternate version of Lost. And we already did season 1, so if you're watching this for the first time, go back and watch season 1, otherwise this won't make a lot of sense. This is my alternate version of Lost season 2. So there's going to be several variations that I apply, basically taking the things that I wanted to see happen in the show and applying them to the show. And also what I'm finding is that as I look at things that I want to apply, I realize there's certain things sometimes I don't take into consideration. For instance, Shannon's flashback takes place in season 1, so then when the abandoned episode comes up, it's like, well, shoot, what's going to be the flashback now? So things like that I didn't really consider, but once I considered it, I made the change. Hopefully that makes sense. So this season, what we're going to be taking a look at is, what if the button was not real? So as you know, during the show, the button was real at the end of the season. It's really what crashes the plane. It really is what creates the sky turning purple and tells Penny about the island. But what I'm proposing is, what if Jack was right the entire time, and what if Locke ironically was right at the end and that button was not real at all? What would happen? Now obviously that takes place at the end of the season, so you're not going to see too many results from that as the season progresses, but suffice it to say, there still will be a decent amount of differences from what our changes were in season 1 that will apply even more drastically to season 2. So then once we see that the button is not real, those changes will trickle throughout the rest of the series and see how the show changes when there was just no doomsday button, if you will. Alright, so let's get started, and as always, let's take a look at the Lost 48 survivors. Well, now it's a little bit less than 48. And for now, we're just going to look at who are the main cast, reoccurring characters, and extras from the original survivors. I know that there's going to be flashback extras. I know that there's going to be others extras now, but we're just worried about the original castaways. So here we go. So for main characters, we have Kate, Sawyer, Claire, Hurley, Shannon, Charlie, Michael, Locke, Sayid, Jin, Sun, Jack, Ana Lucia, Mr. Echo, and Libby. Okay, and for reoccurring characters, we have Rose, Vincent, Mars, Steve, Tracy, Nikki, Paulo, Frogert, Jeff, Doug, Sullivan, Dale, Bernard, Cindy, Ethan, Ivana, and Walt. And for their extras, we got Pamela, Jerome, Kiana, Jason, Beth, Orlando, Floyd, Adelina, Marcia, Amato, Faith, Becky, Ava, Dane, Jesse, Natalie, Chloe, and Brian. And again, like I said, there are reoccurring characters that are others, or even if you want to count flashbacks, but we're not going to count those at this time. Okay, so for the first episode in season 2, it is Man of Science, Man of Faith, which is a Jack-centric episode. And this episode is very similar to what we see in the show, with just a few differences. So Shannon never sees Walt, so when she runs off, she's just looking for the dog, but she never sees a Walt that is soaking wet. Remember, there's only one gun at the camp, not 4 guns. We only have the Nigerian gun and the Marshall's gun at this point. There's no case of guns. And then finally, just as you already kind of saw, the extra Ivana got moved up to reoccurring because in this episode she gets a speaking line with Charlie when they're talking about the others. So there's that. And that's pretty much it for any changes in episode 1. So episode 2 is Adrift. That's a Michael episode. Now there's only one major difference in this episode that's worth mentioning, and that is in the actual episode it ends with Michael agreeing to let Susan take Walt, but in my version, Susan illegally takes Walt to Europe before Michael has a chance to win the case. And essentially what happens is Michael goes back to the lawyer, kind of upset about losing Walt and upset that he's going to have to pay for basically a service that did not prevent him from losing his son. And to make a long story short, the lawyer basically says that he's not going to have to pay a cent. And when Michael asks why, he's like, well, Susan didn't wish it. And that really drives Michael nuts, because he's like, wait a minute, why is Susan telling you what you are not charging me? So Michael believes that his lawyer may have been working for Susan the whole time, because the lawyer specifically said that that Susan wished that Michael would not be charged. Okay, so episode 3, Orientation, which is a Locke-centric episode. Basically everything stays the same except, well, there's a couple differences. The first major difference is that all the Taily scenes from Everybody Hates Hugo are in this episode. So they're all moved there. And secondly, well, actually there's a couple things. So the other thing is that Jack and Desmond talking about Sarah means a little bit more, because we never actually saw the wedding flashback in season 1. Remember, I removed that. When Desmond asks Jack what happened to the girl, and he says, I married her, this is the first time the audience knows that Sarah was Jack's wife. That was first mentioned, that they're not married anymore. So, and that was mentioned in the finale of season 1 when Jack tells Anna Lucia that he was married but not anymore. So going into season 2, we knew that Jack was married. We just didn't know who the girl was. So that's essentially what this scene reveals. So then the Claire, Sun, and Shannon scene of where Claire finds the bottle of messages and Shannon and Claire give it to Sun, that's in this episode. And Sun also still buries it. And at the very end, after Bernard reveals that he's Rose's husband, we see a shot of Rose at the very end of the episode. So it ends on a good note. We now know who Bernard is. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so episode 4 is And Found, which is a Jin and Sun flashback centric episode. And actually, there's no changes in this one. This episode will be exactly the same as it was on the actual show. Now, you probably noticed what I did there. I eliminated the Hurley-centric episode, Everybody Hates Hugo. And the reason I did that is there's just, I don't care about Hurley having to figure out the food status for everybody. The flashback is kind of also unnecessary, because we know he wins the lottery. We don't need to see what happens immediately after he wins it. I understand that that's part of something like that, a major change in your life, and like you have that one day before your entire life changes. I get that. That is somewhat relevant, but I just didn't think it was really relevant for Hurley's character. So, because we already revealed he wins, and then things immediately start happening to him. So that was kind of my thought there. And yeah, and I guess the reason it's not one of my worst favorite episodes is because I really like the Taily scene. So there are some good things about it, and the acting's good and things like that. I just didn't think it really fits the overall story. So everything in that episode is removed. So you're probably wondering, well, hey, wait a minute, what happens to the food? Everybody eats it. It's not that complicated. You see the storage room of food, and it's just assumed everybody eats the food. The end. Oh, and yeah, do I get rid of the shower scene with Kate, or Jack and Sayid looking around the hatch? I mean, none of that matters, because we already know from what you already have been told that the button is going to be fake in my version. So, needless to say, like, none of that stuff really matters. And also remember real fast before we move on that Jack also doesn't have a key around his neck, so therefore, like, all that magnetism stuff with the keys not happening. Okay, so episode 5 is Abandoned, and that is going to be a Cindy episode. Yeah, that's right. Cindy from the Tailies is going to have her very own flashback episode, but I have to be very clear here that the flashback is very, very brief. You don't really see a lot of information about her. And there's a few other changes as well, and we will go through those now. So, first off, with Shannon's romantic evening with Sayid, she never sees Walt. What happens that freaks her out at the beginning of the episode is she hears the whispers. So, and also Vincent runs away at some point, and that's why she's out in the woods. So, the same night that happens, we see the scene where Paulo is trying to bury something that we don't see, and you see the nicotine gum, which implies that he found the pack. It's the same exact scene from Expose where Locke tells Paulo not to bury anything because of the tide. So the next day we see Shannon walking around, and she's asking about Michael and Walt's stuff, and she wants to give it to the dog to help build the sense of familiarity with the dog. So because she's basically just trying to build a relationship with Vincent. And she also wants to see if there's dog food. And remember, she's a little shaken up because of hearing the whispers the night before. And when they go off and look at Walt's stuff, that's when Vincent runs off again because he smells. Now, if you want to interpret that as Vincent was trying to find Walt on the island, or Michael for that matter, I don't know. I mean, you could interpret it that way, but in any case, she's not looking for Walt. That's the important part. There's also no side plot of Charlie and Claire disagreeing on the baby. There's no conflict there. But we do keep the scene where Locke comes around and puts baby Aaron in the blanket. That scene's pretty cute. And then holds Aaron. So furthermore, Charlie and Locke do not have the badminton game and the chess game, I forget what they're playing, where Locke says that Charlie was an addict. And remember, there's no Shannon flashback scene. Instead, we get the flashback scenes of Cindy. The flashback scene of Cindy is basically where she it's going to be very similar to the flashback scene in Further Instructions, where there's basically a group of people, and Cindy's a part of that group, and everything seems fine at first, but then the next flashback, you see Cindy in that same police station where Boone and Sawyer were brought in season 1, and she's talking to that same police officer, and it's revealed that Cindy had basically joined some sort of a cult, and that she has an issue when it comes to authority figures. She just follows their directions without question, and he even suggests, like, why don't you go into customer service if you're going to be like that. And that's it. That's all we get on Cindy. Just something very, very quick. And it kind of is very similar to what we see from her in that episode and the following episode, where she'll always just sort of agree with whatever Ana Lucia says. And oftentimes won't even be right. Like, she'll make statements like about Nathan where, oh, I didn't see him on the plane. Yeah, and I didn't see him on the plane either, and yeah, he was totally on the plane. So, the flashback is basically implying that the others took Cindy because she would be easy to control, and they were able to get that information from their spy, which of course is revealed in episode 6, The Other 48 Days. So before we get into the second, before we go there though, so again, Shannon never sees Walt, but she does hear the whispers, and she also sees Vincent running. So when that happens, she chases after Vincent, not Walt, and And so Sayid never sees Walter, and none of that happens. And then that's when she's shot by Anna Lucia. All right, so episode 6, The Other 48 Days. So basically, it's exactly the same as on the show. You know, Goodwin's the one that we assume tells the others about Cindy, like, oh, you should take Cindy when you have a chance, that type of thing. But the main difference here is that Mr. Echo doesn't go silent for 40 days. So Mr. Echo talks. Like, we're not gonna have the thing where he doesn't talk, but he doesn't say a lot, so he's still pretty quiet. All right, so episode 7 is Collision, which of course is an Ana Lucia episode, and there's no changes here. Everything's going to be exactly the same as it was in the episode. Episode 8 is What Kate Did, which is a Kate-centric episode, and one of the big differences here is there's going to be no horse in the jungle and no scene where Sawyer is Wayne. Kate's been awake for over 24 hours. They actually say that in the episode. So when Kate's going crazy, it's because she's just really, really tired. She has a dream that Sawyer is Wayne, done with the Wayne actor in Sawyer's clothes. That's what'll be the difference in my episode. Like, she'll kind of like blink and it actually will be Wayne. So it'll be a lot more obvious that it's just like some sort of an exhaustion thing going on. But it still riles Kate up because of her unresolved feelings, and that's what she basically says to Sawyer at the end. That speech is kind of the same. She doesn't call him Wayne, though. She just talks about how, like, whenever she tries to get close to Sawyer, like, she sees him. So she's kind of like, you know, talking to Wayne, like, beyond the grave, if you will. And yeah, and like I said, no horses. So that's like the primary difference there with that episode. So episode 9, the 23rd Psalm, that's going to be an Echo episode, and it's going to be a little bit different. First off, Claire and Echo never speak in this episode. So how it starts off is we got Jack, Sawyer, Charlie, and Echo in the hatch, and Jack tells Sawyer about the meds that he needs and how he needs to change his bandages, and you know, it's literally kind of a doctor-patient conversation that somehow Charlie's listening to. And Sawyer asks for any alternatives besides the meds that he has to take. And Charlie, who is there pressing the button, by the way, we're actually giving Charlie something to do. We never actually see him press the button on the show. So yeah, he's going to be one of the people who presses the button. Like, why wouldn't he be one of them? So Charlie, who is pressing the button, says that there is a Virgin Mary statue with drugs that could help. Possibly. But Jack, being the doctor who knows what he's talking about, immediately shuts that down and says that it will not help. So after Charlie pushes the button, he leaves, and Echo is kind of in the shadows listening to all this. He hears Charlie talk about the Virgin Mary statue with drugs in it, and he follows Echo to the beach. So when Echo comes up to Jin and Charlie, which is a really funny scene where Charlie's distracting Jin fishing. When he comes up to Jin and Charlie, he tells Charlie to take him to the statue he mentioned earlier. And now, unlike the show, Charlie doesn't play this coy. Like, he actually is like, oh, okay, I just suggested this, like, a few hours ago. He's like, oh, all right, not sure what you want with the drugs, but... and that might be the only pushback, and, like, that might actually happen in this episode. I think Charlie, as the former drug addict, is going to try to convince Echo, hey, listen, I used to do drugs, like, you don't want this, like, trying to talk him out of it, but he's not gonna, like, refuse to take them. So he reluctantly takes them, and then that part of the episode plays off exactly the same with the smoke monster and everything like that. But all the conversation that happens in the actual episode where Charlie talks about, like, you know, not doing drugs or anything like that for himself, like, that part's removed, because he's not. That part of his life is over. We already went down that path. So we're gonna get a somewhat additional scene for Echo's flashback. So in the 23rd Psalm, the flashback ends when the plane takes off, and then in season 3 we get what happens after the plane takes off. We're moving that to this episode, but we're not doing all of that. We're only gonna do part of it. So essentially, what happens to Echo is he gets taken back. They assume he's the priest. He learns about having to go to London. And then all that stuff where the people are coming in to take the vaccine, that's taken out. Because what happens is they tell Echo about the vaccines. And like in the show, Echo goes and sells some of the vaccine before he leaves for London. So Echo gets caught. Now, they don't realize he's not a priest, but he gets caught selling the vaccine. And obviously, the people that work at the church don't like that, so they board up the church. And, of course, Echo gets just as mad as he does in the actual show. And they tell him, like now we can't use the church because of you selling the vaccine, because now the church is not sacred. And if you really think this church is Yemi's, then you owe him one church. So that remains. But the part where he kills all those people in the church, that part's removed. And then that's it for that episode. So then we move on to episode 10, which is the hunting party, which is a Jack episode. And that episode goes exactly the same as it does in the episode itself, except for the ending. So when Jack gets back and he goes to talk to Ana Lucia is talking to somebody else, and that somebody else is Mars. So you know how in the episode Ana Lucia is talking, feeding Vincent at the end of the episode, and Jax comes up and he's like, "Oh, you made a new friend." Well, then I'm actually literally substituting Edward Mars for the dog. So I don't think she's gonna be feeding him and throwing him food or anything like that. But basically, they're hanging out, and Jack's like, "Oh, cool, you made a new friend," and Ana Lucia says progress, and Jack and Mars, kind of give each other the polite greeting. And when Jack asks Anna if she had killed another, she sort of hesitates, but then Edward Mars says that, "Hey, don't worry about me. This ain't my jurisdiction." So they talk. She talks openly. She's like, "Yeah, I killed one of the others," and that's when Jack asks both of them how long it would take to train an army. And finally, again, just to reiterate, Charlie is not jealous of Locke and Claire because in the actual episode he sees them. And I should go back to the last episode. There's no conflict between Charlie and Claire, so Claire doesn't kick Charlie out or anything like that. So because of all that, because of none of that conflict with Charlie, we're completely skipping Fire and Water. So all the contents of Fire and Water are gone. Now the only thing that is a little regrettable, and I could have thrown it in somewhere, but I decided not to, is there is the whole Hurley meeting Libby part. But I took that part out because you see him start to help Libby with her tent in another episode. So they've already met. So by the time we get to the maternity leave episode, I believe that's the next time we see them talk. It might even be sooner than that. They've already started a rapport, so you don't need to see them in the hatch or anything like that. So here we go. Episode 11, The Long Con, which of course is a Sawyer episode. And because, again, none of the Fire and Water stuff happened, so Charlie is not the one who has to relocate to the suburbs, as Sawyer says. So Edward Mars will be taking the Charlie spot in that part of the episode. So at the beginning, Mars is helping, or basically building Ana Lucia's tent for her. So Sawyer calls him already whipped, basically. But then Mars points out that Jack is going through Sawyer's tent, and then when Sawyer goes to approach Jack, you can see Mars laughing about it. And that's the last time we see Mars until the end of the episode. So then the episode pretty much plays out exactly like it does in the actual episode. But then at the end, when we see Sawyer in the woods, it turns out that the accomplice is not Sawyer, but Edward Mars. It's Edward Mars that helps Sawyer take the guns and medical supplies. So we're basically saying here that Charlie's not the one who attacked Sun, but it was Edward Mars was the one who attacked Sun. So that part plays out exactly the same, except we're just substituting Mars for Charlie. So Charlie has nothing to do with all this. Because again, he's on good terms with Claire. He's fine. Everything's fine. So when Mars followed Locke and told Sawyer where the guns were, he took the rest of the guns for himself when Sawyer went to the beach. So at one point, Sawyer did get the guns, didn't move them to where he wanted to move them, but Mars basically followed him. And then when Sawyer left the guns, that's when Mars took them. So essentially what's happening with Sawyer in this show is that he's basically being long conned by all the people he's conning with. Like, we had Killo who came after him. Then we have in this episode, we have Gordy coming after him for the long con. And then again, we have Mars kind of out conning the con man here too. So that seems to be the theme, is that he's a good con man, but like he's not nearly as good as he thinks he is. So basically, this is how the dialogue goes between Sawyer and the marshal. When he's in the woods, the marshal basically comes up to him, and they talk about basically the same dialogue that he and Charlie have at the beginning, where Sawyer basically says to Mars, "Oh, Locke never saw you coming, huh?" And Mars was like, "No, you never saw me." And then he's kind of wondering like what the marshal wants, and he's like, "Oh, right, you want your gun back, don't you?" Because again, that's why they started this. And then he also knows he wants guns for the army, so he's like, "Well, how many guns do you need for the army?" And Mars is playing along. He's like, "Oh, I just need 2 for now. I'm good with 2 guns." And then so Sawyer goes off on his own. He doesn't show him where the stockpile is. Like, he thinks he's by himself, and he goes to see where his guns are to get the guns for Mars, and it turns out that the guns are gone. And then he finds out that Mars is following him, and then Mars comes out and says, "You really think I was going to let you keep the guns?" Because earlier what happened was Mars told Sawyer, "Yeah, he took my stuff too." Mars complains about not being able to get his gun back, and then Sawyer's the one who says he knows how to get it back. So just like Sawyer says, like, the long con has to be the victim has to be their idea. So Sawyer thought that this whole long con was his idea, when it really was Mars' idea, by bringing up the fact that, "Oh yeah, like, my gun was taken too, shucksy doodles." And then Sawyer's like, "Oh hey, I know how we can get our stuff back." But Sawyer just thought Mars would just take his gun and the guns for the army and not all of them. And he believed Mars when he told Sawyer that he wanted to piss off Jack. So basically Sawyer was just kind of being naive about this. So this pisses off Sawyer, and he points his gun at Mars. But Mars reminds Sawyer that they both got what they wanted. Sawyer got the medical supplies that he wanted, and Mars got the guns. So they should both be happy. And Mars also reminds him that he has a stash again. And Mars basically ignores Sawyer when it comes to the gun pointing. He's like, "Yeah, you're not going to shoot me." He doesn't say it, but he just walks away, and Sawyer just puts the gun down, and then lost. We see the Lost logo. So the basically episode exactly the same, except Mars has the guns, not Sawyer. So episode 12, one of them, that's a Sayid episode, and there's no changes here. It goes exactly the way it did in the show. So episode 13 is Maternity Leave, which is a Claire episode. So there's a few differences here. There's no situation where Claire asked Locke to sleep by her tent. When Claire is worried about the baby being sick, Charlie goes back to the hatch to get Jack and not Locke. And because of the previous episode, one of them, Charlie does know about Henry being in the hatch because Sayid tells him. So basically that's what's happening there. So then later on in the episode, we see Mars and Ana Lucia doing some army training with Steve and Jason. And by army training, like, both Mars and Ana Lucia have a gun, but they don't have guns yet. And there's everybody thinks Sawyer has the guns at this point, but Ana obviously knows because she has a gun. And one of the people's names, it was Jason. So Ana Lucia is being a dick to Jason in the army because Jason was the name of the person who shot her. So She just doesn't like the name Jason very much. And she is, like, really going at it on this guy. Like, shouting at him, like, really going into him. So Mars actually tells her to cool it and, like, basically tells her to, like, take the day off, essentially. So because Ana Lucia has a gun and she was told to take a day off, she is now free for the day, which we will get back to in a little bit. So the reason Mars gives Ana Lucia a gun is because they're both in law enforcement. So when all the stuff's going on with Claire, Kate does go to Sawyer for a gun. And just like in the episode, he makes her tell her what's going on. But then Sawyer reveals that he actually doesn't have any guns and that Mars has them. So at this point, Kate's the only one that knows that Mars has the guns and not Sawyer. And Kate's not going to even attempt to ask Mars for a gun. But she does notice that Ana Lucia has one. So Ana Lucia joins Kate and Claire on their trek to go find medicine. And she's basically just there to use the gun. Now, in the actual show, Sawyer says, no boys allowed, huh? And I'm keeping that in here as well. Because I don't, even as I'm doing this, I'm not really sure why Sawyer didn't go with them as opposed to Ana Lucia. But the fact that he put himself in that position in the show, I don't want to change that. So for whatever reason, it's just going to be like a girls only adventure of some kind. And because Charlie and Claire are on good terms, nothing's wrong, Charlie watches the baby while Claire goes and looks for the medicine. And Charlie did actually want to go, but Anna goes instead because she has the gun. And Charlie doesn't like that because Anna, of course, killed Shannon. But when they point out that he killed Ethan, he didn't really have a big leg to stand on. So basically, Charlie just kind of has to let it happen. But he's fine to take care of Aaron while Claire's gone. And again, Claire's gonna go because she's the one who wants to find this medicine. So again, it's an adventure with Kate, Ana Lucia, Claire, and then Danielle when they eventually find her. So the whole part where Danielle tells Claire that she hoped Aaron wouldn't be sick, that actually comes into play a lot more towards the end of the entire version of the show that I have. So just keep that in mind as we watch these videos. So number 14 is The Whole Truth, which is a Sun episode, and pretty much it's exactly the same except for one key difference. In my version, Ana Lucia has the gun, not Charlie. Charlie, again, he had nothing to do with the deal, so he never has a gun. But Ana Lucia still has the gun because of her work with the army training. So when they walk out to look for the balloon, it's actually Charlie who's checking out Anna, and Anna accuses Charlie of checking her out, and he's like, no, I'm looking at your gun, like, you shouldn't have the gun because you murdered somebody. And then they get into a back and forth, and then finally it's decided between the three of them that of all of them, Sayid should hold the gun. So reluctantly, Anna gives the gun to Sayid, and at this point she trusts Sayid to have the gun because she may have killed Shannon, but he would have killed her by now if he wasn't trustworthy enough to have the gun at this point. So that's essentially what happens there, and then the rest of the episode's exactly the same. So episode 15, Lockdown, which is of course a Locke episode. The episode's exactly the same, but there's one point in the episode where when they play the poker game, like Sawyer asks Jack, like, oh, why didn't you ask for the guns? Now remember, he doesn't have the guns, but in this version, Jack still thinks Sawyer has the guns, and it's not 2 episodes from now when he finds out from Ana Lucia that Mars has the guns. So that's essentially where we're at with that. So episode 16 is Dave, which is a Hurley episode. And first and foremost, for goodness sake, there is no scene of Hurley destroying his food. All right? So that's the primary difference in this episode. Like when he says he doesn't want the food, he gives it away, and then after that, the pallet drops. So off island, here's what's going to happen. So off island, Hurley will believe that Dave is real until Dr. Brooks shows him the photo that Dave was not taken in the photograph. He was not there. So then, both off island and on island, Hurley believes that Dave is not real. So when he first sees Dave on the island and off island, like the whole time he just thinks that it's an imaginary friend, not real. However, here's where the episode fixes itself from what happened on the actual show. Dave tells Hurley that he in fact is dead and that all people who die end up on the island, and the only way to get off the island is to jump off the cliff. Now, this will help lead to the theory that everyone on the island is dead, but it'll also mostly eliminate the theory that the entire show is Hurley's imagination. Because there won't be a line where Hurley's like saying that he imagined Libby and everything. I'm sure that theory will still be going around all the way up until the very end, and maybe even after the show, but for the most part, most of that part is eliminated. But now Hurley believes that when he sees people who aren't there, he believes that they are dead. So that's essentially the main thing to get out of this episode. And they're actually on the show itself. Like, there is one line that helps add to this theory. Dave claims that he was trying to get Hurley facts, so he'd die, but the plane crash basically took care of that. And now that's linked to a line that Dave says, or that's linked to a line that Hurley says when he says to Dave, "You wouldn't care if I ate myself to death," when they were still in the mental hospital. Now, the other key difference here is that Dave and Hurley will have no physical contact. So in the show, he throws stuff at him, he slaps them, stuff like that. "You're not real," slap, None of that happens. So we're not going to play with that, because when you start playing with that part just gets too confusing. So that's another thing. Like, you're not going to see him massage Hurley awake or anything like that. No, like, Dave and Hurley can't have any physical contact, and that's actually really important. Like, it won't, like, eventually this will all make sense, but they cannot have physical contact. That's just the key thing you got to remember here. So when we are doing the pallet scene, the people who are going through the pallet specifically are Hurley, Libby, Charlie, Jin, Sun, Dane, Jesse, Jerome, and Sawyer. And that's pretty much it for Dave. And just remember that during the scene where Sayid shoots at Henry, that's when Lucia takes the gun back, and now she has the gun again. So episode 17 is S.O.S. It's a Bernard and Rose episode. And this one was really tough for me because the scenes are so good. I really wanted to just stick with what was on the page. But when they during the pilot and during just Rose's reaction to thinking about her husband and, wearing the wedding ring around her neck and all that fun stuff, it really implied that Bernard and Rose have been married a long time, not just a couple months. And so I really want to stick to that original interpretation. So the scene where they meet in New York, it's set in the 70s. They meet much younger. They meet basically 30 years prior. So when they are in Niagara Falls, it's actually a 30-year anniversary and not a wedding proposal. But you still find out that Rose is sick, and the rest of the episode pretty much plays out exactly the same for the Bernard and Rose flashback. So then there's a few differences going into the rest of this episode where when Jack prepares to go out and trade Henry for Walt, Lucia still tells Jack to take someone with him to the line, and then Jack suggests that he's going to take Sawyer because he has the guns, and that is when Anna tells Jack that Mars has the guns and not Sawyer. So then Jack goes to where Mars is doing more army training with Steve, Jason, and now Paulo. Paulo has now joined the army. And Jack basically pulls Mars aside and he's like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second alone?" And that's all you see. You don't actually see what they say to each other. And then later on, what we're going to see is Jack going down to Kate and Sawyer and inviting Kate to to go with him to the line, and that pretty much plays out the same way. So Sawyer says he wants him to come along because they went to the line together before. So that's basically what he says. And he's like, "Ah, no, I'm inviting Kate." So let's do the let's do the going to the line storyline first. So essentially, as they're going off to the line, it starts like it's pretty much the same at the beginning. Like Kate says she's flattered that Jack asked her, and I mean, pretty much the same thing. He asked Sayid first, blah blah blah. So then Kate asks Jack how he was able to convince Mars to get a gun, and well, first thing he said was, "I told your Marshall friend that I was going to take Sawyer with me." So he's admitting right there that he lied to Mars about who he was going to take with him. And the other thing that happened, is that Jack tells Mars about Henry, which leads to a failed interrogation attempt by Mars. So then there's actually an added scene to this episode where Mars goes to the hatch and tries to talk to Henry, and it goes nowhere. Like, Henry's basically like, "Well, I'm not Henry, but I'm also not an other either." He just flat out lies to Mars, and Mars, being a pretty skilled person from law enforcement, he kind of knows he's getting nowhere, so it basically leads nowhere. So that's basically how he got the gun. He exchanged the information for the gun and explained that he was trying to get Walt back. So then later on, as we know, Jack and Kate get caught in a net. And now this part's actually kind of important because this is the first time Kate gets a gun. She takes the gun out of Jack's pants and tries to shoot the rope down, but then Jack gets the gun and hits the rope perfectly. So this leads to a conversation where Kate asks Jack about Jack's shooting skills. She's like, "How'd you learn how to shoot a gun so well?" So Jack explains to Kate that when he was in college, he had to take an elective. And the first elective he tried was flying lessons, but that did not work out. Then he tried another elective, and then that one he quickly dropped out of. And then he joined a final elective, which was gun lessons. And it turned out that he liked the gun lessons much better than the other two. And keep that conversation in mind because it could be the most important conversation for my version of Lost. Just keep that one in the back of your head. Okay, so the last thing to talk about real fast. So everything else is exactly the same with that walk to the line and everything like that. So I just want to talk about who was working on the S.O.S sign, because actually in the episode itself, the background extras get a lot of FaceTime. Now, the ones I chose for my version of Lost are ironically not the ones really used in the episode, but there were a few, but not many. So, like, a lot of it is just original on my end, but that part you don't have to worry about. So, the people who worked on the S.O.S sign were Bernard, Hurley, Jin, Brian, Amato, Doug, Dane, Tracy, Orlando, Jerome, Beth, Floyd, Jesse, and Adelina. Now, they may have not been the ones who worked on it the whole time, but at least they were there at one point. So there you go. Then we move on to episode 18, which is Two for the Road, which is an Ana Lucia episode. The Frogurt and Hurley lost missing pieces scene is added to this episode, but there's no reference to them doing laundry because that, of course, was removed from Fire and Water. So remember, Ana Lucia never needed to get a gun because she already got one from Mars. She never gave her gun away, so that's never a part of the story. So we never see the Sawyer and Ana Lucia hookup. That part is removed. That she does not need to get a gun of any kind. So what happens is Jack and Kate are the only ones that know that Mars has the guns. So in this episode, we still have the scene where Jack and Locke kind of make up very, very briefly. And instead of going to Mars to get the guns, though, they go to Mars to start the army. They're like, okay, Michael said we can take them. Like, let's go. Like, we can do this. So now in this version, though, Jack doesn't want Kate to come with him because she's like, oh, you're going to scare Mars off. But she's like, no, let me come because maybe I can do something to convince him. So, like, make some sort of a deal for not necessarily her imprisonment per se, but like maybe she's confined to the hatch or confined to the beach, something. Like, they could do some sort of deal if needed, and then they can figure it out later. So basically they're using Kate herself as the bargaining chip. But when they go to tell him to get the army ready, Mars refuses. And the reason he refuses is he's mad that Jack lied to him. He's like, you never took Sawyer, did you? I saw him here the whole day. And then Kate wasn't here. So he's like, I don't trust you. We're not starting the army. I don't care. I don't care what you're talking about. Like, I don't care if Michael's back. So there's no gun conflict. There's just kind of a leadership conflict. They never point their guns at each other. And if you really want to know, the Bad Twin script is not burned either. So that still exists. So then we still see what happens at the hatch, because at this point Ana Lucia is left alone with Michael, and Michael takes the gun just like he does in one of my favorite scenes of all time, and he goes to and he murders Ana Lucia and Libby and frees Henry. However, and I hate making a change to one of my favorite scenes, but it is necessary. Michael does not shoot himself. And the reason he does not shoot himself is because in the next episode, just like Henry, Michael is also gone. So episode 19 is question mark, and this is an Echo episode. So at the beginning of this episode, like, we had the conflict where Locke told Jack that Ana Lucia slipped, and that's how she got the mark on her forehead. She didn't tell him that Henry tried to kill her. But that really doesn't make a stand here. I mean, now maybe Jack would have handled things differently if he knew that, like, Anna might have opened the door to the hatch or whatever, or opened the door to the safe. But at this point, she's been there the whole time, so it really doesn't make a huge lick of sense. She's had the gun the whole time. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, so Jack and Locke and Kate return back to the hatch after they fail to get the army. So they're basically discussing what to do. And when they enter the hatch, that's where they see the horrors. They see that Ana Lucia is dead and that Libby is pretty much close to death. So this time there's no Sawyer with them. They never go to Sawyer or anything like that. So there's no Sawyer in this at the beginning of this episode, at least. So remember, Echo still has the dream. So when he wakes up, he goes to the hatch with the axe by himself, and essentially what we have at the hatch is we have Jack and Locke and Kate and Echo, and Jack is the one who's getting ready to run off and try to find Henry, but it was Kate that stops him. Kate's like, Jack, who's going to take care of Libby while you're out looking for Henry, and that's when Echo steps in just like he does in the episode, and he's like, I'll go look for him. Locke has tracking skills. We'll go find them together. So, and then that leads to pretty much the same stuff that happens in the actual episode. Another key difference is there's no heroin or cocaine, so Libby's unfortunately suffering pretty badly here. But Jack, you do see Jack giving her an injection of some kind that helps help her ease the pain a little bit, but it's not the heroin, and it's also not cocaine. It's there's nothing like that going on. So then, of course, we also, in the flashback, we have Malkin's daughter, and all I can say about what happened with her and why she says that Yemi says that Echo's a good priest, which makes absolutely no sense based on everything we know about him. That will be revealed in season 6, and that's all I can say about that for now. So essentially, but the one takeaway we can take from this, and this is just, I'm kind of pointing this out as opposed to saying it. Again, we know what happens at the end of the show, or not the end of the show, the end of the season. because I already told you that the button's going to end up being fake. So the island gave both Locke and Echo dreams to basically get them to find the Pearl Station. That's essentially what's going on here. So basically Locke fails in season 1 because he gets the dream about the plane and he never finds the Pearl when he has that dream. So when Echo has the dream about having to go find the question mark, Echo and Locke find the Pearl. So, but that's what it was. Like, basically it was the island was giving Locke dreams to try to get them to stop caring about the hatch, and the Pearl proved that the Swan Station was just a psychological experiment. So that's essentially what's going on with the dreams here. So in the episode, at some point, Kate does point out to Jack that Hurley should really be told about Libby. So Kate runs off to the beach to talk to Hurley, and while she is there, she does run into Sawyer real quick, and then almost immediately sees Hurley, who's asking if she has seen Libby because they're about to do a picnic. And you see Kate tell Hurley that Libby was shot, and Sawyer's an earshot of this. So Sawyer, Kate, and Hurley return to the hatch. So while Libby is on her deathbed, you have Kate and Sawyer in the booth when Kate's crying, and then, Hurley's sitting by Libby, and, Jack's doing all he can. So they're all there. So they actually do all make it there at that spot, just like they are on the show. Okay, so I do want to say that the next couple episodes, there's going to be a lot of differences between the show and the episodes. So if I don't mention anything, it's exactly what happened in the show, but I'll try to go through it as best I can. So now remember, Michael is not there. So all the scenes of Michael in the hatch or on the beach are deleted from this episode. So the only scenes we're going to see of Michael are Michael in the flashbacks. So episode 20, 3 minutes, it's a Michael episode. But the only scenes we're going to see of Michael are the ones of the flashback of him and his adventures with the others. Now that's going to play off nearly exactly the same. The only difference in the flashbacks with Michael is that there's going to be no list, and this is pretty important. So, they do need him. They did want his blood and everything like that. Then they're like, there's been a development. We need you to go get Henry back. And if you do, you and Walt can go free. And, Michael asks for the boat and everything like that. But then, he does get to see Walt. But he's not given a list of names. So he's not asked to do anything else besides helping Henry get free. That's all he's asked to do. So when this episode starts, we see it starts in the initial episode where Jack, Kate, and Sawyer with Hurley also there. They're discussing what they should be doing. Now remember, Michael's not there, so they're basically saying we need to really go attack the others, blah, blah, blah. And they're, debating how they're going to do that when Mars has the guns and everything like that. And finally, Hurley's just like, they're dead. Ana Lucia and Libby are dead. We haven't buried them yet. I really like that scene. I really want to keep it in there. And then there's another part of that episode I really like where Jack just is like, we'll take Libby. And then Jack asks Kate if she could, and he doesn't even have to finish the sentences. He's just like, he's asking Kate if they could take Ana Lucia to her grave, and then he asks Sawyer, and I love that scene so much because there's no argument, there's no discussion. That's just like they know what they need to do. Jack's like, Kate, could you? And he's like, and she's like, of course. And then Jack is like, Sawyer, can you? And he's like, yeah. It's just nice. It's just a nice little moment. I mean, I understand it's around tragedy, but it's just nice to just not have it become an issue. It's just like they gotta do what they gotta do. This is where the episode diverges. So when they get to when they bring the bodies out to the cemetery area, that's when Mars notices the bodies and approaches. Remember, he's been working with Ana Lucia with the army, so they've been spending a decent amount of time together. So he's horrified by what he sees, and for the first time all show, we kind of see that he has a heart. And that's when Jack and Sawyer reveal that it was the guy in the hatch that did the killing. And at first, Mars doesn't believe them. He's like, no, like, he was locked up. That makes no sense. And he actually thinks it's Kate. But, you know, at this point, they're both pretty frustrated with this. They're like, come on, like, are you serious? And they point out that, like, Henry's not there. And he's also like, think about it. Like, I'm the doctor. I'm not gonna murder anybody, and I'm definitely not gonna hide a body just to stick up for Kate. And Mars accepts this. He's like, yeah, you're right. Like, this is not. And he also knows Kate, and he also realizes that that's not her MO either. So he knows, like, what she did to get arrested, and that's not something like this. So when Kate and Hurley are digging the grave for the burial, Mars is seen off on the side looking really distraught. And ironically, it's Kate that goes up to Mars and asks if he's okay. And Mars says to Kate that, you know, killing for revenge is one thing, but this death just had no purpose, and it's like the worst type of evil imaginable. And, you know, Kate points out that they finally agree on something, and, you know, Mars sort of nods at her and says, enemy of my enemy. And that's really all you get. Like, it's kind of a, hey, we're on the same side on this one, but we're not best friends either. You know, there's just kind of an agreement. So while all this is going on, it's just key to remember this is the first time both Sawyer and Hurley learned about Henry at all being in the hatch, and they learned that from Kate. So when they walk to the funeral, Sayid actually is the first one that points out that maybe this wasn't Henry, maybe this was Michael, and he may have been compromised by the others when he was away. And, you know, Jack really doesn't buy it, just kind of like on the show, and they come up with some opposing theories, and one of them being that Henry may have actually kidnapped Michael, as opposed to killing him. But, you know, so at this point they're just like, they're unsure. But unlike the show, remember, Michael's not there, so they don't really have to worry about it too much. And then, of course, there's some conversations with Jack and Sawyer that happen in this episode, but I'm moving those to the next episode, which is the finale, Live Together, Die Alone, episodes 21 and 22, and that is, of course, a Desmond episode. So, it starts off with the boat arriving, and we'll have a little bit of a difference, because remember, there's only one gun at this point. Mars is the only one with the guns. So only Jack and Mars have guns. So Mars also swims out to the boat. So Jack, Sawyer, Sayid, and Mars, all four of them swim out to the boat. And that plays the same. They find Desmond, and then this is where the episode starts to diverge a little bit. After Desmond's boat arrives, we see Jack, Sayid, Mars, Kate, Sawyer, and Charlie all huddle up to discuss what to do about the Ana Lucia and Libby killings. And Mars, again, even though like they just had this like peaceful conversation in the last episode, Mars objects to Kate being part of this like leadership conversation. But Jack basically says, look, she's been involved with this stuff this whole time. You really need to get over this. So, you know, Mars may have been a little bit more okay with Kate, but not to the extent that they're going to be working together like this. So Jack and Mars agree, though, that it's time to take the army to the others. Like, they gotta, this attack with Ana Lucia and Libby just, it can't stand. And they also talk about how Sun was attacked, as well. But remember, Mars was the one that did that, and we'll get to that pretty soon. So Mars agrees to divide up all of the 11 guns. Sayid agrees, but he also advises caution as this mission should not be all or nothing, and even Charlie points out that it would be bad for the camp if none of them make it back. He just sort of says this in jest. He doesn't really plan anything. So Mars does agree to let Kate be in the army, because if she dies, it's no big loss. So basically what's happening is that Mars is using Kate as like a Suicide Squad situation. Like, he's basically like, okay, if the others kill Kate, no big deal, but if Kate also kills the others, no big deal. So it's kind of a situation where, you know, Kate's still on his side and everything, but like, if somebody has to go, it might as well be Kate. That's the way he words it. So because of the urgency and the fact that they have 11 guns, they did decide to find 11 people. So essentially all of the quote-unquote husbands and boyfriends agree to join. Now, you might be thinking, well, why would they leave their significant others? Well, you got to remember, Jin and Bernard did stay behind to shoot the dynamite in season 3. Stepping ahead, spoiler alert. I mean, you should know this whole show if you're listening to this. But anyway, so they already do this. So basically those scenes where you see like Jin and Sun saying goodbye and Bernard and Rose saying goodbye and stuff like that, that's basically in this episode. And actually, like, Rose does say to Bernard, like, will you change your mind if I help you with the S.O.S sign? So, you know, like, and which actually makes a lot more sense because the S.O.S sign, like, is pretty close to this episode. So it makes more sense for it to be in this episode than the other one. So they all feel like they have to go because they have people to protect. So Charlie goes to protect Claire, Jin goes to protect Sun, Bernard goes to protect Rose. Paulo has already agreed to go to protect Nikki, and we can only assume that Steve is going to protect Tracy. So there's the situation there. Jack and Sawyer go to the hatch to get the ammunition for the guns, and during this part of the episode, this is when they have the conversation where Jack tells Sawyer that he and Kate got caught in a net. So they never actually talk about Anna Lucia, though, like they do in the episode. So there's no Michael leading them across the island. So they use Michael's description from 2 episodes before and decide to go north. So just to reiterate, when they go to go north, the army consists of Jack, Kate, Charlie, Sawyer, Steve, Mars, Jin, Sayid, Bernard, Jason, and Paulo. And just to quickly talk about Paulo for a second, when they all go to leave, because again they all have their little moments. Jin and Sun, Bernard and Rose have a moment. Charlie and Claire have a moment. The Charlie and Claire, they're not really established as being together even yet, but you know, it's kind of it was around this time in the actual finale where Charlie and Claire kiss for the first time, so that actually happens here before he goes off to fight. And but Nikki is way different about it. Nikki basically tells Paulo to continue to look for their luggage on the way to the others. So that tells you that Paulo has not told Nikki that he found the nicotine gum bag, and he more than likely has the $8 million on him somewhere. So he does not tell her this. Paul tries to kiss Nikki goodbye, but she refuses to kiss him. So that is basically what happens there. So as they are trekking across the island going north, like, you know, the Hurley bird scene happens and all that stuff. There's no scene, obviously, of Michael's gun not being loaded because Michael's not there. Gotta remember that. We do get the scene where Kate and Sawyer notice the others across the creek and shoot at them. So that part happens exactly the same, but then there's going to be a small difference. When Kate says she's going after the other that got away, it's Mars that stops her and not Jack. So once again, Mars kind of starts something. So Mars basically points his gun at Kate. He's like, no, you're not going anywhere. Now, even though she didn't do the killing, Sawyer just killed the other, not Kate. She just shot at him. But, you know, she's going after the guy, so what's she gonna do, you know? So Mars basically tells her to stop. Like, he's he tried. He was trying to like be okay with this, but he wasn't. Like once he saw her shooting, he just couldn't handle it anymore. So both Sawyer and Jack point their guns at Mars, and then it gets a little nuts because then Paulo points his gun at Sawyer and Jack. Sayid reminds Mars they are at war, and in war people get killed. She's not committing murder. And that's when Mars admits, like, you know, he kind of backs off. He's like, look, I'm sorry, like, I'm not used to seeing Kate with a gun like this. Like, I was bringing her in because of murdering somebody. Like, it's a lot to take in. And then that leads to, you know, just overall conversation about, like, how important this all is because of what happened to Sun and everything. And Sawyer finally gets Mars to admit to the group the truth. Like, and Mars admits that he was the one that attacked Sun. Now remember who's with them during all this. Jin. So Jin goes pretty crazy on Mars, as he has been known to do in his flashbacks. And you also saw him do it with Michael. So Jin just starts wailing on Mars when he realized that Mars was the ones that attacked Sun. And Jin was about to leave, actually, like after he beats Mars nearly unconscious. Jin starts to leave, but Jack asks him to wait, reminds everyone what happened to Anna Lucia and Libby, and that Michael and Walt are still in danger, and so is everybody else. Like, even though Sun was safe, this doesn't change anything. And he also says that he has a plan, and Sawyer asks what the plan is. Alright, so as they continue, let's actually switch gears here and talk about what happens in the hatch. So the main point of this what if video is to talk about what would happen on the show if the button was just a mind game. So this is what happens. So the Desmond flashbacks are basically exactly the same. The only difference is at the beginning, when he gets out of prison, it's not an army prison, it's just a regular prison. There's no mention of army. So therefore, in the flashback, there's also no mention of an army prison. So when Locke and Desmond lock out Echo from the hatch, he goes to the beach asking if anybody knows where the dynamite is so he can blow open the blast doors. Now remember, Charlie is in the army, so that scene where Charlie helps out Echo is going to be removed here. Charlie's not there to help him. And also remember, he's mad at Echo for abandoning the church. But Hurley's still there. Now, Hurley's still in mourning, but once Echo explains to Hurley that he truly believes everybody's going to die if he doesn't help them, Hurley does step up and help Echo. So, and that actually kind of makes sense, because remember, Hurley's the one who handled the dynamite in the season premiere, so it makes sense that he knows where the dynamite is in the season finale. Like, even in the episode, the real episode, Charlie's like, oh, Hurley showed me where the dynamite was that one time. Like, really? When did that happen? You know what I mean? It's just like, Hurley actually knows where the dynamite is. So it just actually makes sense that Hurley's the one who shows Echo. But Hurley doesn't go into the hatch. She actually yells from the top of the hatch, and really tries to convince Echo that he could hurt everybody. So keep in mind that that's where Hurley is. That he's at the top of the hatch. So when Echo lights the first fuse, like, it happens exactly like it does in the show. It just doesn't move the blast doors at all. So now where my version is going to be different is Echo is in the process of lighting the second fuse right before the alarm sounds. So as Echo lights the second fuse, it is 4 minutes left in the countdown. Locke has destroyed the computer at this point, so Desmond opens the door and gets the key. Echo walks in and realizes that the computer is destroyed. Before he can react, we see Desmond go underground to turn the key. Upstairs, we see everything except the timer itself compress. But everything's happening like it does on the show. We're seeing system failure. Everything's flying around the room. So Locke turns to Echo and he says, I was wrong, just like he does in the actual episode. But before Desmond turns the key, so he does all that same stuff, He's about to turn the key. And now I should point out one thing, that when he's underground, that top part doesn't come off of the key thing. That actually stays. Like, that's the one part that doesn't, like, move around. And that's really, really important. So again, everything's moving around. He says, "I love you, Penny," and he goes to turn the key, and everything stops. Like, everything, like, stops moving around. You don't hear the humming sound anymore. So Desmond comes back up, and both Echo and Locke think that Desmond just saved them, but he reveals, "I didn't do anything." And then over the loudspeaker we hear Dr. Chang. And Dr. Chang says, "Congratulations, you have passed the critical thinking psychological examination. Please meet your recruiter at the Pala Ferry at 4 p.m. On behalf of the DeGroots, Oliver, Hanzo, and all of us here at the Dharma Initiative, we thank you. Namaste, and good luck." So Echo, Locke, and Desmond are pretty shell-shocked from this. And they look up to the timer and see in disbelief as it rolls back to 1:08. It is official that the button was fake. Echo looks at Locke, and Locke confusingly says, "I was right." Almost surprised. Like, he was right, but he didn't think he was after he said he was wrong. But that silence is only for a brief moment, the silence. Because there's a distant sound of a fuse being lit. Then Echo realized that he forgot about the dynamite. So when he tries to go back and stop the dynamite blows up. And Echo dies in the explosion. However, the hatch will not explode like it does in the show. There's no detonation of an electromagnetic anomaly. We already saw that the dynamite did not blow up the hatch the first time. So even though the blast doors are up, there's no reason that the dynamite will blow up the entire hatch the second time. There will be a pretty large explosion, and some of the hatch will be very, very badly damaged, but it's still there. Now, as for the part you're probably thinking about, well, wait a minute. We see that there's a systems failure, and we see that Desmond got back just in time to enter in the numbers. We see stuff flying around, and it's revealed that it happens on September 22nd. So are you saying that the system failure thing was a complete coincidence to the plane crashing? In this case, we actually are saying that. Yes, indeed, that is the case. That it just happened to be the same day. And that's just a coincidence. It had nothing to do why the plane crashed. We will get into why the plane crashed in Season 3. The other thing that should be talked about real quick is Stu, from the Dharma person who was partners with Calvin. We obviously meet Stu in Season 5, Stu Rzazinski, and you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, if the button's fake, why is he going along with all this stuff? And the reason is, remember how, like, obsessed he was with the swan? Basically, what's being implied here is that this whole thing just made him mentally unstable himself. Whether he truly believed in what was going on or not is kind of a mystery, but essentially, he may have been doing the experiment over and over again. He may have been the constant in the experiment, and the other partner was the variable. Maybe they needed to see somebody who really believed in what was going on in order to do the experiment. And then over, oh my goodness, like 15 years of this, like, it probably drove him nuts. Like they said in the video, the experiment's only supposed to last maximum of 540 days. If Stu stayed in there the whole time, that probably drove him nuts after a while. And you don't know how many times, like, people actually won the experiment around and got to hear that they passed. Maybe they spent the whole 540 days, maybe not. So that's what happened there with Stu. So, like that. So the invisible map it's implied that Stu was actually trying to find the pearl. Like, probably over the years, he probably figured out what was going on with the hatch. There was probably a small part of him that realized it was fake. So he was trying to figure out where the pearl was, based on his memory of what was on the outside of the island, or on the outside of the hatch. So meanwhile, let's go back now to the army. Okay, so for the army battle, Jack, Charlie, Kate, and Sawyer approach the line and they cross it. And once they do, we finally get our big reveal when Michael steps out of the jungle. And at first they think, hey, we found Michael, yay, how about that? But it's quickly revealed that he has betrayed them when he points his gun at his former friends. Before Jack, Kate, Charlie, and Sawyer could even react to this, he is followed quickly by Friendly, Pickett, Price, Miss Clue, and 15 extra others. Without warning, they immediately tag Sawyer, like with the same tag they tag him with on the show. So Jack, Charlie, and Kate run. They run, and all the others pursue them. But this is the plan that Jack had, which apparently Sayid approved of. Because when they go to this bottom of the hill, which the others could not see from their vantage point, it turns out that the survivors were waiting for them. So basically, Jack, Kate, and Charlie just duck down, and when they run down, they have Sayid, Mars, Steve, Paulo, Jin, and Jason and Bernard all with guns pointed at them, waiting for them. So immediately, they take out about half of the others, and the others begin to retreat. So Jack and Kate and Charlie get up, and they all chase after the others at this point. And yes, Michael was part of that, and they did not shoot Michael. Whether they didn't realize it or what. I mean, it is kind of noteworthy that they did not know that Michael was a part of it. So it's probably fair to say that they didn't point their guns at Michael during all this, and they probably were just like, we'll figure this out as we go. And it may have been said, it's probably said as they chase after the others, that Michael has been turned. So they chase after the others, and they chase them into the woods. And then from there, it kind of turns into somewhat of a jungle warfare, where they're hiding behind trees, trying to get the rest of the others, essentially. But this is the others' woods. The others kind of start to win at this point. So at some point, Miss Clue nearly gets the jump on Kate. But before Miss Clue can tag Kate, Mars knocks her out, or believes he knocks her out, and saves Kate in the process. But once that happens, Pickett shoots Mars, instantly killing him. So with the sound of gunfire, Jason and Paulo show up and start shooting towards Pickett, but he hides behind a tree and then is able to shoot Paulo and Jason, killing both Paulo and Jason. So very, very quickly, the survivors have lost 3 people. And shortly thereafter that, when Pickett was about to kill Kate, Miss Clue regains consciousness. Again, she was knocked up really, really quickly for a very short period of time. She tags Kate. So once Kate's tagged, there's no need for Pickett to kill Kate at that point. And then shortly thereafter, Jack comes through. He picks up Kate, tries to run out of the woods with her, but he's quickly tagged. And then Charlie tries to make a run for it, and then he's tagged. But by then, Sayid orders retreat. He sees what's happening. 3 of them have been killed. 4 of them have been captured. Like, they gotta get out of there. So Sayid, Jin, Bernard, and Steve escape. So essentially, the others win the battle. But they did lose about 7 or 8 people. So, I mean, and not to mention the guy that Sawyer killed before. So they lost probably 8 people in the whole thing. So So not really a great victory for the others there. The ending shot of the battle is going to quickly show the bodies of Mars, Paulo, and Jason, just as a reminder to the audience that those are the 3 members that died. And the one thing that is going to happen that's going to be a little strange, and it's going to take several seasons until we have an answer for it, is we're going to see one of the others standing over Paulo's body, and that random other will be played by actor Robert Carlyle, the one who played Rumpelstiltskin on Once Upon a Time. And again, it'll be a while until we figure out why he's there, but that will be worth noting at this time period. So then the rest of the episode plays out exactly the same, except Charlie is not sent back to warn the camp to stay away. He is also taken with Jack, Kate, and Sawyer to wherever they're going to go. Michael and Walt leave the island the same way. Henry's revealed to be the leader, and Henry gives them the bearing of 325 to leave. So after we see that, we then have a scene located in a room with an Egyptian thread hanging from it, and we don't really know where we are, and we see a silhouette of a man entering the room, and then we see the silhouette of that man talking to 2 other silhouettes. So we have a total of 3 silhouettes of men, but only one of them speaks, and the man who speaks says a new bearing needs to be calculated. That's all he says. Now, we don't know how long this takes place after Michael and Walt leave the island. It's fair to assume that Michael and Walt have left the island at this point. And the very next scene that we see is the sky turning purple. And we see a bunch of shots of the extras, a bunch of shots of Claire with the baby, dealing with the fact that the sky is turning purple. Now, we don't see the quarantine sign end up there or anything crazy like that, because remember, the hatch does not explode. So the sky turns purple, but it's not because of the hatch. It's because of something else. Now, if you've already figured out what it's from, good for you. If you haven't, that's okay. We will get to it. So then, after the sky turns purple, we cut to the scene of the boat, which appears to be in Antarctica, and then we have that exact same scene where they call Penny and tell them that they found the electromagnetic anomaly. So yeah, that kind of, now some people might be confused by all that. Some people might be thinking oh, wait a minute, maybe the button was real the whole time, that something did happen. But no, I'm telling you explicitly, that is the experiment said very specifically that the button was not real. Desmond never turns the key. So the only thing that happens from all that is Echo blew himself up. So that's very interesting that in both finales, now I think about it, Arts blew himself up in season 1, and then Echo blows himself up in season 2. And spoiler alert, in the end of season 3, we're still going to have the dynamite exploding some of the others. So yeah, lots of every finale. Oh my god, I might have to really think about this. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Lost What If series video for season 2. In season 3, we're going to be answering the question, what if Charlie had the flashes instead of Desmond? And seeing what you just saw with who ends up with the others, you might have an idea where I'm going with this. And we also remember, this is the first thing we're seeing from No Button. If Desmond never turns the key, he doesn't have the flashes. So there you go. Somebody has to have the flashes, and that somebody is Charlie. So again, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel when you leave the page. And as always, take care.